With a thin, trembling finger, she pressed down the fold in the black paper with as great care as her weak body could manage. Her friends called her Doll. Her family called her Dolly. So she went by Dahlia. She paused as she struggled against the arthritic pain that throbbed in her hands and fingers. She felt her breathing become labored as she fought off another wave of nausea. But Dahlia knew that she could not fail, not this time. Time, in fact, was what she had run out of. She had already thrown away a dozen imperfections that day, and this was to be the last of 1,000 perfectly folded paper cranes. Not long ago, she had been in excellent health, young, vibrant, with an energy and exuberance that defied all reason. Her youthful beauty had blossomed into womanly sensuality. The eyes of both boys and men rested on her form, taking in all that she had to offer. Her bright eyes and rosy cheeks, her beautiful long brown hair, and her enticing full red lips, her soft skin and her long legs, her slender waist, and the curves she held in all the right places. She had it all, just not that long ago. With her breathing steadied, Dahlia continued, her hands resting on the table as her fingers traced out the perfectly folded lines of the wings before curving the head of the crane downward and expanding its body out. A sigh escaped her lips. She had finished it, the last of the paper cranes. The tension she had felt dissipated, but the swelling in her stomach started up once more, and she shuffled her way to her dark and dirty bathroom to be sick for the 5th time that day. Nothing left to come out but stomach acid, a pastel green and yellow. She wiped her mouth with a shaking hand and saw her reflection in the mirror. Not that long ago, she thought. In the mirror she saw her true form. Foggy eyes and gaunt cheeks, pallid skin and a hunched back, thin lips and a scarf to hide her patchy, graying hair. And beneath the shirt she had managed to clothe herself with that morning, a skeletal frame devoid of beauty and threatening to lose its association with humanity. The doctors had never been able to decide conclusively what she had been afflicted with. Each time they thought they had found the answer, her symptoms had changed. It didn't stop them from taking her money and collecting her insurance, all for them to offer nothing but a shrug and a bottle of painkillers. Dahlia knew better, though. This was no wasting disease, ravaging a woman meant to be in the prime of her life and looks. No, Dahlia knew that she had been cursed. She had lost weight as it ate through her limited fat and then through her muscle. The color vanished from her skin as her hair came out from her scalp in bunches as she struggled to shower. All food developed the same taste, either that of wet nickels or cold iron. She couldn't even taste the copper in her mouth when she coughed up blood. The blood, Dahlia had been told, came from her stomach ulcers. But she knew better. In the dark of night, at the start of her illness, during her fleeting hours of sleep, she suffered a barrage of nightmares, all of the same image: a serpent. Whether a viper, or cobra, or python, slowly uncoiling in the murky shadows, lifting its head to sink its fangs into the fleshy wall that surrounded it, before tearing away strips to swallow as it licked the wall in its lips. Dahlia would then awaken, only to rip away her blanket and see her stomach, now bulging, as though pressed upon from the inside by something long and slithering. The doctors had told her that she had ulcers, but Dahlia had been cursed, and a serpent had made a nest of her body and a meal of her flesh. She could feel it, even then, gnawing away at her, robbing her of her strength, desecrating her human form. She strung up the last paper crane with the other 999, and wasted time, too much time, to get her shoes on. She left her filthy apartment, which she had been too exhausted to clean in months, and did not bother to lock the door on her way out. Making it to her car, she laid down the strings of paper cranes in the back seat, steadied her breathing, tightened her grip on the steering wheel, and took off into the cloudy night to the place where it had all begun. Off to the old gnarled tree behind the park of her childhood. Time had become a difficult thing for Dahlia to measure ever since she had become ill. She did not know, for example, how long she had even been sick. A year at least, perhaps closer to 2. She also did not know how long ago she had started on the paper cranes. More than a few months at least. She had started them before she had left her job, back when she still had enough strength to work. She had known, though, in her heart of hearts, that if she could perfectly fold 1,000 paper cranes, she could make a wish. Just one wish. And she knew, just as certainly as she knew that there was a serpent eating away at her, that this wish could only come true if she offered those paper cranes to the old gnarled tree situated behind her childhood park. She had been there before, on a whim, when her illness had first afflicted her, before she had even purchased the origami paper for the cranes, in order to beg the tree to save her. The tree that the other children had whispered about. The tree her grandmother had warned her to stay away from. The tree she had often watched for hours as a child, hoping to catch a glimpse of the shadowy movements in its limbs. When she had found the tree as an adult, in the midst of her illness and desperation and loneliness, she had not seen the shadow. She instead had seen the straw doll nailed to its trunk. And all doubts about the reality of her curse vanished. The road to the community she had been raised in was poorly lit, with only a single streetlight for every half-mile. She forced the blood back into her head so that she would not black out, as had become common for her back home, and ignored the burning pains in the joints of her hands as she gripped the steering wheel. Who had cursed her hadn't mattered. Or perhaps it had, but no longer did. She remembered once, when she thought she had more time, dedicating herself to discovering the culprit. There were many people Dahlia had once considered friends and family, that had selfishly believed that she had wronged them. Many people that had gossiped about her, or attacked her with cutting remarks, or outright accused her with their slanderous words, whether in private or public, at home or at work. But so few of them would know about the old gnarled tree, and only a few of those had the vitriol and malevolence to risk their souls by cursing her with it. It could have been her former best friend, a lifetime of jealousy and inadequacies, driving her to acts of outright evil. Or perhaps it had been her ex-fiancé, who had been so controlling and narcissistic, defying her and accusing her of infidelity. Now, though, as she faced the end, who had done so and why no longer mattered, because if the old gnarled tree could curse her, then surely it could grant her wish just as well. As the straw doll hung rigidly at the trunk, the bare limbs of the tree swayed and cracked against one another, and in her mind came the childhood memory of her diligently folding paper cranes for some childish desire. 1,000 paper cranes for a wish, she had been told. Back then, as a child, she had lacked the focus and conviction to follow through with such a feat. But in that moment, with the straw doll staring blankly back at her, she knew the tree wanted it. 1,000 paper cranes, as black as its bark, not nailed to its trunk, but hung freely from its branches to be tossed about by the wind. And so, with a mind firm with resolve, she had begun, knowing the tree demanded perfection for the wish it would grant. Not one of the paper cranes could carry a single flaw. The park from her childhood came into view, as abandoned and dilapidated as the abandoned and dilapidated houses that faced it. No one seemed ready to live near the tree as she had in her youth. She parked and made her way from the car, the paper cranes cradled gently in her arms, as she shuffled through the park, its grounds more dirt than grass, and its grass more dead than alive. Each step pained her, and each breath weakened her. Every movement seemed ready to be her last. Passing through the park and into the underbrush beyond, Dahlia looked ahead, her foggy eyes becoming hungry for the first time in ages, as she saw the old, gnarled tree once more. Devoid of leaves, and growing out of the ground, curled and twisted, the trunk and remaining limbs of the tree were black and old and lined, like the wrinkles of age. Flanking the tree were the 2 holes that Dahlia had dug back when she had found the straw doll, when she had realized she would lack the strength to dig them when it came time for her wish. Thinking of time, Dahlia knew that she had run out. Her joints felt ready to burst, and her bones felt ready to break. There could be no preamble, no final thoughts or misgivings. The curse had ravaged her body so thoroughly and completely that she knew taking even a moment for contemplation would give the serpent that resided in her all the time it needed to finish the job. Through force of will, she lifted the 1,000 perfectly folded paper cranes and hung them on the lowest hanging limb of the tree, their black paper blending perfectly into the night and the bark. Raising her head up, she gazed through the dead limbs and branches of that old gnarled tree, out into the dark clouds that paved the night sky, and offered the wish of her heart in her croaking voice. Please, take this curse and use it to afflict the one that had sent it first. In the silence that followed, a malevolent smile spread between the dead limbs and branches of the old gnarled tree. A Cheshire smile of the shadow, the one she had sought to catch a glimpse of as a child. Dahlia returned the smile, the first smile that had crossed her lips in longer than she could remember. She took a look down at her body, the one that had nearly lost its human form, and decided that there was nothing worth saving. But as she felt the uncoiling, slithering sensation pass through and away from her body, for the first time in memory, she knew that she had something she wanted to share. The unseen serpent would find its creator, its master, and make itself a new den within their belly. With the last of her strength, Dahlia lowered herself into one of the holes she had dug all that time before and laid herself down. With her curse finally gone, she decided to rest for a bit, perhaps forever, but not alone, because she knew it wouldn't be long before the other hole was filled as well.